All right, we are on, and good evening. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. If you can hear me, then give us a thumbs up so I can make sure that the audio quality is good. I hope that it is. I think that it is. And so if you'll just let me know, then I would sure appreciate that. We do, of course, have all the prayer requests that we mentioned this morning still. I do continue to pray for the Danny Jones family as he's in the hospital with COVID-19 and for his family who are also ill as well. So just pray for them. Okay, we're here, but keeping our phones turned up. So let me crank up the volume just a little bit for you and see if that helps. That will hopefully give you an increase in volume there. And hopefully that'll be better. I do continue to pray for that family. We continue to pray for the others that were mentioned in the chat this morning as well. We are going to open up with a word of prayer, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Heavenly Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you give us. We thank you for this opportunity that we have to just give you glory for what you've done and who you are. And so, Father, I pray that you'd give us the words to speak that would announce your glory to the world, Father, that you would help us to know you more clearly by what we have seen you do in the life of Brother Todd and Sister Marion, and ask now, Father, that you just give us the words to speak. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so, as most of you know, how long has it been now? I was trying to remember.
It was January 20th.
January 20th, 2 months. Two months ago. It seems like not that long ago. I said 2 months this morning, and then I think I took it back, but I was right the first time. So two months ago, you had a major heart attack and are now sitting here upright, drinking.
Kind of slouching.
Kind of slouching a little bit, yeah. Drinking a warm beverage of some kind, coffee. Mute the microphone. And sitting here with your husband. So you've come a long way. And so for the people that may be watching the live stream that don't know about what went on, then let's kind of take it from the top about what happened.
Well, on January 20th, that was Martin Luther King Day. So it was a Monday. Honestly, it was, seemed to be pretty much on par day with just about any other holiday or whatever. I had a little bit of work to take care of. Had to run out and look at one little job and then get back to the house. And we, as a family, were just piddling around doing things. Marion at one point got stuff together and made potato soup for dinner. And we sat down as a family and had dinner and laughed and joked and even made some little cracks about, dying, in fact, to that point, it was just like a normal day. You're not thinking anything's going to happen. But not too long after dinner, Marion started complaining that she was, having some heartburn, and she had that experience a time or two, or off and on, previously.
It was here. It was like under my diaphragm. So it wasn't
like
here.
where you'd think.
It wasn't, oh gosh, my heart. I mean, it was down here.
Mm-hmm. How long had that been going on?
I mean, to me, it didn't feel any different than any other time you would have, like, indigestion.
Mm-hmm. I think you meant how often had you had that happen in prior to?
Well, I mean, every time I eat garlic, it happens. I mean, like I said, It wasn't any different than any other normal. Right. Oh gosh, I had chili dogs for lunch. I have indigestion. I mean, it didn't feel, or at least the indigestion prior didn't feel any different. There was nothing that would have said, oh, hey, this one's different.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because one of the things the doctor said before you woke up was that for women, like, oftentimes that's the only symptom they get. They don't get the chest pain and the arm weakness. It was just nothing to really set off any I need to go to the doctor type alarm bells. Yeah,
and that was pretty much where we were at, or had been, because it wasn't every time she ate. It seems like maybe certain foods, and we're in our 40s now, so your body changes and things happen. You just get used to the idea that, oh well, this whatever, I eat this food, it doesn't agree with me as well as it used to, what have you. I mean, that was kind of where we were at in the thought process with where she was at with the occasional heartburn. But I knew that it was pretty bad that particular evening. Just I could tell by the way she was behaving, it was really bothering her. So it started, we were sitting there in the living room, watching television, and then I noticed her get up and she kind of shook her arms. And I was like, what's up? What are you doing? And she's like, my arms they just feel heavy. And I was like, are you okay? She's like, yeah. She's this, I just don't feel good. This heartburn is really bad. And I was like, okay. So she got up and she was walking around. At this point, I'm kind of trusting her that she knows her body. I'm not living in there, so I expect that she knows what's going on. At one point, she came to me a little while later and asked if I would go down to the store and get her some ginger ale. Sometimes that would help settle her stomach, in the past. So Eden and I left. Lindsay was, I think, in her room playing video games or online with Ashton or somebody. And so we left, went down to the corner store. We're gone probably 8 to 10 minutes and came back and brought her some ginger ale. And she poured a glass and drank a little bit and kept walking around the house. Eden and I had sat down in the living room and were watching television and talking and laughing back and forth. And I was going to be taking her to Faith Bible Institute in a little bit from there. And so we were just kind of waiting on time to get in the car and go. And, Marion had been in the back of the house in the bedroom for a little while. And I had checked on her previously several times, kind of cut up with her a little bit, just trying to make her feel better. But I was leaving her be. I know that when she feels bad, usually the best thing to do is just kind of let her work her way through it. The next thing I know, I'm just about to get up and take Eden to FBI, and I'd actually just kind of scooted forward in my chair when I noticed her walk out the hallway towards the living room, and she was holding low with her left hand underneath her rib cage, and then she went to put her arm up on the wall and missed the wall and just smooth fell out flat right there in the floor.
How far up do you remember of all that?
I don't remember any of that.
Okay.
I don't remember the entire day.
Wow. Okay.
I remember Sunday night, and I remember going to bed Sunday night. I don't remember anything that happened on Monday.
Wow.
Nothing. I don't remember making dinner. I don't remember the jokes. I don't remember feeling bad. I don't remember any of it.
That's a shame because your kid said that was the best potato soup you ever made.
I know.
You don't know what you did.
And I don't know what I did.
Okay, all right.
But they told me I'm not allowed to make it anymore. So.
Yeah, it was a bad combo.
Yeah, killer soup is what we came to call it. But
yeah, and I haven't made it since. So
obviously, I immediately rushed over to her because she hit the floor pretty good. Not where she bumped her head bad or anything like that, but watching somebody just pass out in front of you, especially when it's someone that you really care about, I mean it's disturbing. Something obviously is very wrong. This is abnormal behavior, So I rush over there. Eden's not far behind because she's in the room there still, and I'm looking at her. Her eyes are glassed over. She's breathing, but it's very labored, very short, shallow breaths, and the noise, the moaning noise that she was making. It's a noise I've been trying to forget, because it was really, I knew something bad was happening, but I really didn't know what was going on. I start, checking her, like I said, she's breathing. She's not conscious, but she is alive. I'm checking her pulse. I can feel a heartbeat, although it's kind of erratic or, I guess rapid. But, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a paramedic or an EMT. So I don't know necessarily what I'm really looking for. I know that there is a pulse. I know that she is breathing, but something is definitely wrong. Lindsay comes out of her room shortly after, Marion hits the floor. She assumed that it was just, somebody dropping something on the floor, and only came out because she heard me talking to Marion and in a very upset tone. There I am within the span of probably from the time that she falls out, under a minute. I don't know the exact amount of time. I would say somewhere around 30 seconds or so. I'm trying to assess what's wrong, And, what can I do? How do I fix this, And within that short amount of time, it becomes very apparent to me that there is nothing I can do, and I am going to have to watch my wife die in front of me. I can tell that she's dying, and there's nothing I can do. I can't stop this. And in that moment, it's abnormal for me. Obviously, never been faced with that specific situation before, but I'm usually the person that whether it's myself or somebody else, when there's a serious something occur, I'm the guy that can jump right straight to the help mode, the manage it, that kind of stuff. And I was absolutely lost in the moment. And I was not so much panic as in freak out panic, but all I could do was just beg her not to leave me. That's all I could do. I didn't know what else to do. And in that, I kind of felt, frozen in that moment. And then I hear Eden's voice say, "Do I need to call 911?" And at that, was like flipping a switch in me. And at that moment, I said yes. And then things changed, and I started to try and, manage I start checking things all over again. So Eden calls 911. She's talking on the phone to the 911 operator. Lindsay starts to dial 911, and I told her, "Baby," I said, "No, just one." And so she starts crying, and I told her, "You know what? Your job is to pray." And she was so awesome. She just knelt right down there at her mama's feet and started praying. And Eden, like I said, was on the phone with the 911 operator. She explains where we're at and what's going on, and they begin to ask questions.
Just for context, how old are Lindsay and Eden?
Eden is 15, Lindsay is 14. So all of this started at approximately 5:50 in the afternoon. Like I said, Eden should have been up here at church about 6 o'clock, and that was about the time that I was going to be leaving at 5:50 to bring her up here. So 911 operator begins to ask questions to assess what's going on. We're going through a series of questions, and about every third question she asks, I'm having to back her up 2 questions because the 2 questions previous has now changed. So when she was asking about her breathing, Marion was still breathing, but the breaths were getting further and further apart and more shallow. One of the very first questions she had asked was she changing color? And at that time, she was not. By the time things begin to progress a little bit, when I see that she starts turning blue, it's like a very quick switch in her skin color. Very rapidly, I can see her lips going blue, and that's when I said, "Okay, back up. She's now turning blue." And that's when the operator asked me to roll her onto her back, change her head, position of her head, and this kind of stuff. And at that point, right in there somewhere is where the 911 operator reaches out to the local EMS. So I don't remember the exact time frame. I just know that she had asked several questions prior to getting EMS moving. So then she begins to have me do chest compressions. So the first time I start, I mess up, and I hear the 911 operator, "Nope, that's not it. Do it like this," and she explains it again. So I start doing compressions with her, counting with the 911 operator. And by this point, Marion has not done much breathing at all. When the very first time I start compressions on her, she takes a relatively deep gasp. And then there's no breath for a little bit, And like I said, the girls, Lindsay had stepped away a little bit. Eden was still there on the phone. I might have done compressions for 30 seconds to a minute at tops. I just didn't do it for very long. As I'm doing compressions, I'm looking out towards the front door, and I can see the lights for the ambulance flickering in the front window. Mm-hmm. And so I told Lindsay, I was like, "Go out, they're coming down the street." And I thought to myself, my gosh, they got here fast. And so she goes out, and I said, "Just wave them down so they know where we're at." And Then they, of course, they made their way inside eventually. And I stepped aside. They stepped in. He started doing compressions. The young lady that was there, she put on the 2 pads. She says she's in VFib. And she said, I'm charging. The little machine goes, do, 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 do. And she says, clear. She zaps her 1 time. She says, okay, I've got a pulse. They start trying to she still wasn't breathing, so they put the bulb and everything on her face and started trying to get her oxygen. One of the other EMS people shows up, brings in a little portable, assuming a ventilator of some type. But so they intubate her and get that attached to her. At that point, I'm out of the way. I start making phone calls. I call my sister first. She was the first person I could think of that was probably very, very close or in the area and could get there, knew my children, would have a good indication as to what to do with my kids, how to contact my family, that kind of stuff. And she answered. I explained to her what was going on. And then my next call was to you to ask for prayer.
And you called me at 6:01. And so we've already been talking about this longer than it took for all of this to happen.
I agree. I know it's hard to tell this without, helping people understand how quickly all of this occurred. Me trying to explain it does not do it justice. It's happening like this.
So we've been talking about it for about 15 minutes. If, she had had the heart attack 15 minutes later, we would not be having this conversation.
That's correct. Yeah.
No, because there's 2 different kinds of heart attacks. There's AFib and VFib. Mm-hmm. Well, I had VFib, and a lot of people, of my generation and older, know it as the Widowmaker, because that's the one that, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
Not that AFib couldn't, but, and that's the one I had. So I keep telling them I'm going to get a shirt that says I survived the Widowmaker.
So you really, already, in the first 10 minutes, right, the timing was right where you were not in the bedroom, you came out when he was there, you were still there, a matter of minutes. If Lindsay had been home by herself, she wouldn't have been able to do CPR.
Well, and she had even told me, she said, when I fell on the floor, she said, it just sounded like you had dropped a box or something. She said, I never would have thought to come out because I didn't think that it was you falling on the floor, just you dropped something.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
you.
No,
it's okay.
I looked up on my phone what time you called me, trying to, firm up the timeline. 6:01 that you called me.
And like I said, it was it was kind of surreal in the moment. I'm just going through the motions, doing what I think I should do. Once at the point that they shocked her and they said they had a pulse, I knew at that moment that she was going to live, that everything was going to be okay. But just 10 minutes earlier, I knew my wife was going to die. And there was nothing I could do. So this quick reversal, kind of almost staggers you as an individual. And after that, it seemed like the EMTs took their sweet time doing everything after that, which I do understand. And I understood it even in the moment. Hey, she's okay. They are making sure, she was still not coherent. She was not responsive. So they were trying to see if she would be. They eventually went ahead and sedated her, got her strapped in. There was no emergency at that point because they had her stable. So rode in the ambulance, made a few more calls from the ambulance to church family and to my family and her family, called her parents, or probably the next phone call I made. And that's a weird call. I don't know. Same thing with calling my brother to tell him what was going on. Everybody always expects that when they get the call from me and I'm in that kind of tone that it's going to be about my dad. They're not expecting to hear, hey, my wife just had a heart attack.
Yeah.
But so anyway, get to the hospital. They do their thing. Y'all were already there. Just, for the record, to let all of our church family and anybody else who's watching, not only was our pastor amazing, but I can't tell you how many men and women from our church came that evening to the hospital just to check on us or to be supportive. And it wasn't just me that took notice. Lots of my family took notice of how many of our church family came up to be with us during that time. So I'm very appreciative for all of that. But they eventually take her over, go from ER over to the cath lab. She still has not been responsive. Most of us were kind of anticipating, okay, she's got some kind of blockage or something. We're going to be over here for an hour, maybe. They're going to place a stent, and then, we'll be out of here tomorrow. 2.5 hours later...
Because I don't do anything easy.
No. When the cardiologist finally comes out to talk to me, and obviously this is the first time I'm meeting him, and he begins to ask the most bizarre questions. He's like,
Now, mind you, I met him a week later.
She's like, he's asking me, he's trying to figure this out for himself. He's seen the inside and it doesn't make any sense to him, and I don't know what's going on, but he's asking me, if she's a heavy drinker or a heavy smoker. Does she do drugs? He's looking for any reason to explain to me that every major artery in her heart is almost 100% blocked. And, and he's just like, and she's never had any other symptoms. I'm just like, look, she's had this. She's had this occasional heartburn. It's not been that bad. This is the first time anything like this has happened, So he is shocked, and I explained the story to him over and over again. He really doesn't believe how quickly all of this transpired. So, long story short on all of that, he basically tells me, look, your options are she can continue forward like she is and will probably die in short order if nothing's done. Or she can opt for what will probably be a quadruple, if not quintuple, bypass. And, at the time when I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's shocking news, but all right. So then, explaining that to my family just after that, her dad just about lost it, and I understand. That's his child. I think I would too. Yeah. And I guess, like I said, I was in that mode at that point and had been of just managing. I'm managing. I have to take care of my kids. I have to take care of my family. I have to be the one that's strong. She's okay. I know that she's going to be okay. I have to take care of everybody else around me,
Now, on a side note, he had said that, the Monday when it happened, that I had, was, my arms feel heavy. And I did have that, of course, after he was explaining all this to me. I did actually have that once before. It was probably a week before this happened. And it was the same thing, although I didn't have really any indigestion with it. But all of a sudden my arms felt heavy where I was shaking them. And it was just right here. It was just from my shoulders to my elbows. And they felt like I had weights on them. And I was, walking around the house holding my arms. I was like, what is that? That's just weird. I've never had that feeling.
Yeah.
Come to find out now, that was my body basically telling me, you're going to end up having a heart attack. But it only happened that once. So again, why would I think anything of it? Yeah. It was just a freaky thing.
Right. And it's, I'm glad you're saying that because, maybe somebody will watch this or whatever and they'll, have that symptom at some point.
Exactly.
It would have blown off,
Don't.
Yeah, don't. And with you talking about you kind of comforting and her dad and everything, just to give credit where credit's due with Clear Lake Hospital, your dad was really upset, and one of the nurses that was just walking down the hallway, stopped and talked to him for 5 or 10 minutes, like comforting him and encouraging him and stuff. I was there. I was really concerned with Todd and Lindsay and Eden, who were all having whatever. And so your dad's off to the side, and I don't really know him and everything, but this nurse comes up and spends at least 5 minutes just talking to him with him. And so I thought that was pretty neat that they did that.
Yeah, the hospital was amazing the entire time, quite frankly.
Something new I hadn't learned.
See, here you go.
See, it's always something new.
I don't know if you knew about that either. I know you were...
Yeah, I think I had seen it, but didn't realize to what extent. Because, there was a lot going on, and a lot of people there. But Once you kind of get to that point, they usher her up to CCU, and at that point we know we're going to be there for a little while. Lots of people leave. Some people come up. I was going to get a chance to actually see her that evening, she was still out, but they were keeping her that way at that point. So once they got her settled in, I was able to go in quickly and talk with the CCU nurses and stuff, and then I brought her parents in, and that was a difficult time for them as well. I can remember them talking about this is not the way you're supposed to see your children. It's okay if your children see you this way, but you're not supposed to see them that way. And I know it was very difficult for them, and they were awesome through all of it, helping me deal with my children and just the different things that were going on through all of that. But overnight that night, they were in the middle of switching her meds or something, and she went into a seizure. Now, I don't find this out till the next morning when I walk in and they're doing an EEG, and I ask, why? What are we doing here? Are we just padding the bill, or what's happening? So they start explaining, that this had taken place. Then they start to question me like crazy about whether or not she hit her head when she fell. So, and how long was she out? So they're going through this whole thing about how long was she without oxygen, and did she hit her head? Very, very concerned at this point about brain damage. I tried to explain them to you she was already brain damaged, but they weren't buying it.
How long have you been married?
20 years.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Nobody could escape that totally.
Well,
healthy.
not 20 years yet. It would
Yeah.
20 May. May would have been 20 years.
So
would have been, if depending on how the rest of the
Well,
quarantine if he makes
I'll
it
be
through
fine.
it. Yeah.
I'll make it to May.
Yeah. If he also makes it to May, it'll be 20 years.
We'll see.
So, but I can remember the cardiologist coming to me the next day and asking me a bunch of questions again. He really starts to question again all this stuff about the timeline, to the point where I'm almost upset that he's calling me, as far as I'm concerned, he's calling me a liar. Because I keep explaining to him, man, 10 minutes. 10 minutes, the entire thing, from the time she hits the floor to the time they're zapping her back, 10 minutes. And he's just not buying it. So, we have some family that's attached to the volunteer fire department and stuff like that in town. So I have my sister reach out, and I get the information back, and 911 receives the call at 5:51, and Alvin EMS records bumping her back at 6:01.
At 6:01, you already called me.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the timeline. Is 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes total for this entire episode to occur. And I'm telling you, we were halfway into that before she ever reached out to the EMS. So as I start thinking about this, I'm like, wow, I knew that they had gotten there fast, but I don't know how they got there that fast. So on further investigation, we find that they were already in our area. That's how they were able to respond so quickly. They had already been on a call in the county area, had left that call, had been dispatched another call, but our call came in right behind it, and they swapped it and said, we'll send the EMS out or the ambulance out from the shop on the other call. You're closer to this one. And that's how they were able to get there so quickly. And I asked that same question that Marion was talking about a few minutes ago. I asked one of the nurses, explain to me the difference between AFib and VFib. I want to understand what I'm dealing with here. So she explains the AFib and explains the VFib, and basically the aortic side, I guess, supplies blood to the bulk of your organs and body. But that ventricular side is what's supplying primarily to your lungs. I think it actually was lungs and brain, I think is what they told me. But primarily to the lungs. This is where the lungs feed off that V side. And when that side gets interrupted, whether it stops or starts beating erratically, it is, like she said, the widowmaker, because everything else will shut down. It is super time sensitive. So, what you were alluding to a few minutes ago, here it is really the second day before I'm piecing all this together. I'd thought about it a little bit, to that point. That overnight, you were there all night with us, trying to sleep in the waiting room best that we could. But, I'd had some...
Like the Hilton. It was great.
Oh, it was, yeah. A really bad Hilton.
My rewards nights haven't clicked over for it, but
I can remember, praying that night and just, asking God, I don't know, why all of this is occurring. I'm not sure why it's happening. I know that you're in control. Mm-hmm. You have certainly demonstrated that. But help me to see this. Help me to understand what's going on. And protect my wife. I if anything, I've been shown that my life is going to be pretty bad without her. That's all I could think of in those few seconds was, gosh, how do I go on without her? And as I said, as we started pulling all those details together and really seeing just how God was working in those moments. I can remember a couple of days later, after Marion had already had the heart surgery, and one of the nurses came through and was talking to us, and I don't remember exactly how the topic came up, but the nurse said, "Oh, I know why you're still here. I saw the record. If it wasn't for your husband and your daughters, you wouldn't be here." And I looked at her and I said, "It ain't got nothing to do with me or my kids. I promise you, this was nothing but God." Absolutely 100% total God thing. And I say that with all firmness, knowing that I shouldn't have still been at the house. Mm-hmm. She could have died at any moment. She could have already had the heart attack in the back of the house, and I hadn't gone to check on her because I was giving her space. She could have had that heart attack when I left to go to get her ginger ale. I was gone for almost 10 minutes. She could have had that heart attack after I left to take Eden up to the church. That would have easily been 10 to 20 minutes. Yeah. It happened exactly when God allowed it to occur so that I would still be there, so that I could bear witness not only to His power, but to help me understand who I am. Mm-hmm. That no matter how many things I can fix, no matter what all the great things I make look nice with my hands or whatever else, that none of that means squat, with the exception that He has given me those abilities, that He provides every breath, every heartbeat, every neuron firing in my brain is because of Him. And, He helped me to see that it wasn't by anything that I did. Sure, I've made some jokes with my wife about, saving her life, and that kind of stuff. But, it wasn't me. It just wasn't me. It was all Him all the time. There's no reason why that ambulance had to be in our area and get there so fast. It should have taken them easily 8 to 10 minutes to get to my house from the Alvin EMS, easily. It's just, there was dozens of ways she could have died, mm-hmm. and only one way that she lived. Yeah. And God made the one way happen.
It made me think when you're talking about in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says, "When you pray, don't use vain repetition as the heathen do. They think they'll be heard for their much hearing. Be ye not therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things you have need of before you ask Him." God answered Lindsay's prayer and your prayer and everybody else's prayer before it happened. He already had the ambulance in the right place and already had, he already had you living by some of the best hospitals in the world to get you the treatment that you need. If you lived in Podunk, Arkansas, no offense to the Helms, then it would have been very unlikely. And so, Lindsay's there praying, and God answered her prayer, but He answered her prayer before she prayed it and answered your prayer. And I just, we've got about 35 people on Facebook, 35 families on Facebook watching YouTube and stuff too. If you prayed for the Hanelines during all this, then just comment "prayed" or something on there just to give a visual representation of how many people I know of that were praying during that, because God answered that.
Yeah, and it's funny too that you bring up with the prayer, not just that prayer that was occurring in the moment, mm-hmm. but the prayer that continued beyond that. That through the entire event that night and through all the way up through her surgery, and those that have continued praying for us even after that. And I mean, I can remember even, like I said, that first night, some of the things that I sat there and prayed. For those who don't know, I mean, we don't have any insurance. And I know somebody might be sitting there going, oh my gosh, how foolish can you be? Well, it's expensive. Affordable health care is actually unaffordable health care. And we just don't have it in our budget. We'd have to eliminate things that you just can't eliminate. I mean, how do I survive? We'd have to get rid of the internet. We'd have to get rid of several other bills just to be able to have insurance that we may never use. It just doesn't make any sense, or hasn't made any sense for us in a very long time. And it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at.
I'll show you all these people that are coming in there praying pretty.
And we appreciate it. We felt it. I want you to know, at least I did.
Marion I don't remember any of it.
Marion was Elsa during all of this, or Sleeping Beauty is
Elsa.
Yeah. Well, they did this cryogenic therapy thing on her for a day and a half or whatever.
Yeah,
and,
that was interesting.
It was interesting the way they did all that. Some really awesome stuff they did, a lot of things we learned. But so while she was being cold chilled, we referred to her as Elsa, but I just referred to her as Sleeping Beauty the entire time. But I mean, like I said, God was so amazing through it all. Like I said, I remember that first night. I mean, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to? I got no insurance. How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to do this? At that point, work had been really slow. We were just coming out of Christmas, which is always a kind of a slow time of the year for what I do anyway. We had made a little bit of money that month, but not enough, And so, I mean, but immediately, early that morning, I started getting texts from family, asking how they can help, And as much as it hurts to have to ask, I had to say, if there's a way, I would be willing to pay it back if there's some way I can, just temporarily, just need a little help getting my bills paid until we get past this, and there were those that just stepped up and handed money and said, it's not a loan, this is a gift. We love you, and we love your wife and your family, and this is for y'all, to help y'all through this time. And that was them being compelled by God. And I mean, as much as you swallow your pride in those moments, it's wrong. I had to learn a long time ago. Miss Edna, if she's watching, she taught me a long time ago how to accept a gift, even when you don't feel like the person that's giving it to you should or can afford to. It's not your right to deny it. You basically will be removing blessings from the person who's trying to bless you. So she helped me learn that a long time ago. And as much as, like I said, it does pull at your pride, especially as a man, I was very thankful and appreciative to everyone in my family that stepped up to help with that. And then extended past that with our church family, who were off the charts, insanely gracious with the financial gift that they gave, and those gifts all combined pulled us through those first, the hardest part of that. Got us paid, kept our house, got us paid through things, got our bills paid, kept everything at bay until we could get her to at least somewhat of a healthy point and me back to work. So God's been amazing using His people, demonstrating to us who He is through the entire event.
I did.
Yeah, you did. So it's I know there's people out there that will look at it and they'll say, well, maybe I don't necessarily see it like you. It was happenstance. You got lucky. And I'm gonna tell you right now, nobody's that lucky.
No.
And quite frankly, if you're gonna call that luck, then let's go to Vegas, because I must have the most amazing luck on the planet, or let's play the lotto or whatever, because I mean, there's no way. There's just no way that she's still sitting here, except that God deemed it so. And quite frankly, even if the opposite was true, I would have to be coming to grips with everything else that would have happened if God had decided that it was her time, and that there were 1,000 other things that I was supposed to learn, and that other people were supposed to learn through her passing. I'm thankful that that's not the case.
Me too.
But I trust that would have been the case.
Yeah.
That there would have been that same thing. And I know people, like I said, will look at it and just say, well, you just look at anything and say it was God. No, I'm not that guy. I'm not necessarily a total skeptic, but I am a thinker. I want to know what I know. I want to understand that when I place my faith in God, that it's not just random. It's not the faith of my parents or someone else because they told me. I want to know. So I analyze things. I've analyzed this whole situation in so many different ways, and I'm sorry, there's no way that we make this through all of this like we have, except that God deemed it so and has blessed us through our church family, through our family, through our friends. I've talked to some of our family and stuff that this was very difficult for them to see us in this situation, especially her, especially some of our friends that essentially introduced us. That's how I got to know her. I know that they struggled understanding what was going on and why these things had happened. But I also know that, and we'd had a lot of conversations there in the hospital with some of them, and I know that they were seeing it. I know that they had to have seen it. There's no way they don't see it. So, I mean, even some family that I would say was more skeptical about religion and, or especially organized religion, saw how our church behaved during this time and had to say, that's the first time I've ever seen a church act like the Bible says they're supposed to. So, whoever you are in our church family, whether you prayed, whether you gave, whether you were on that meal team or whatever it was that you did, you were a part of making an impression not just on us, but on hundreds of people who were watching the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful testimony for other people to see. And not just the way the church responded, which I think was great, but the way that you were able to hold together, because it looked really bad for a while there. I mean, we were very concerned. Frankly, the reason I spent the night in the waiting room the first night is that I did not know if you were going to make it to the next day. Right. And kind of pulling one of the nurses to the side and stuff and said, do you think I ought to stay? And she said that she wouldn't tell me I needed to stay, but that I need to keep my phone on or whatever because it could be bad that night. The doctor even said, if you made it through that night, then it would be okay. But it was tentative. But the way that your faith was able to help you through that, to just have the confidence, not that you're not worried, not that you don't love your wife, not that but that you just... I mean, even thinking about some of the other people we saw come through the waiting room in that week. I said I didn't know your dad at the beginning. I spent a week with your parents pretty much. We know each other very well. I know a lot about his politics too after watching the news and stuff with him. So
Oh gosh, yeah, no.
So do the people down the hall and stuff. So seeing some of the other way other people had to deal with the same kind of stuff, you can see the difference that hope makes, that faith makes to be able to deal with that stuff no matter how it turns out.
Yeah.
And so it's the way you were able to handle yourself was a pretty powerful testimony as well, I know, to a lot of people.
I appreciate that. It was funny too, there was a family that when we came into the waiting room that night, they had already been there for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. They were from Louisiana, and we got to spend quite a bit of time around them. And they were there with their father, who had just come to Houston for a routine surgery or whatever, a routine stent placement or something of that nature. And something went drastically wrong during the minor procedure, and they almost lost him. Mm-hmm. So he was in the CCU as well. He was ahead of her in the schedule for the heart surgery. And, we were kind of, once we knew she was going to be okay, they were getting ready for the heart surgery and those kind of things. They hadn't woke her up yet, but they were basically deciding when this would have happened. And they were talking to us about it being, we would be there all week long. It would probably be the following week, maybe the Monday after. And I was just like, oh my gosh, every day what is this costing, and how much longer can my kids be out of school, and there was just all these. There's 1,000 things that you're thinking about, when you've got that whole situation going on. Well, like I said, he was apparently ahead of her in this schedule, but I think it was on Wednesday of that week or whatever. Overnight, he'd accidentally knocked some type of a, what do they call it, a little deal where they...
Central line.
Yeah, a line. They'd knocked a line out of his neck and bled pretty bad that morning, early in the wee hours of the morning or whatever. And because that occurred, they had to give him blood and stuff like that. And he was delayed further, and that bumped Marion ahead of him, and she was able to have her surgery that Friday. Mm-hmm. Now, not that I'm happy that happened to those people, but I still at the same time was very thankful that they were able to move her up so that, some of these things that I was concerned about, were eliminated.
Me too, because I got to go home on Tuesday.
Yeah, that was quick too.
I know.
So, I guess I kind of finished that out. So when we last left you were on ice playing Elsa / Sleeping Beauty. You were trying to get all the Disney princesses in.
Obviously.
I don't know if that was still billable at work hours for your work at the Disney store or not, that you were advertising for them. But
I'll try.
It's worth a shot,
Right?
We were. So there, and then have the seizure, and that ends up being okay. And then we finally get to the bypass on Sunday.
It was Wednesday. Well, Friday's when the bypass.
Friday's when the bypass actually happens. That's right. But Wednesday
is when they woke her.
Wednesday when they woke, because I had Brother John preach for me, I think, or Brother Corey, or Brother Paul, somebody. I'm sorry. I know you're all very distinct, important people to me. I don't mix you all up or anything, but one of them preached for me because Wednesday they were waking her up and wanted to make sure that you didn't have brain damage or anything. Right. Wanted to be here for that, and aside again from the 19 years of gradual drip, everything was still okay. Right. And then so from there, where do we go?
So obviously, like I said, we talked about the cryo thing they did, which was interesting, but I won't go into the details. But as they bring her out of that, they had done 2 different CTs and 1 EEG trying to make determination, was there a brain issue? And they had to know that before they did the surgery. They also wanted to make sure that the blood thinners they had given her early on in the whole process were clearing her system and stuff. But
you don't remember that?
No, she doesn't remember anything. She didn't remember anything until the day after her surgery. Okay.
And I remember very little on that Saturday. Mm-hmm. Sunday is when I really start.
I'll loan you $1,000 if you forgot. You said.
Sure. So they had begun to wake her up, and basically were letting her wake up on her own. They started drawing back the paralytics and the different things that they had on her, and she was starting to move and stuff like that. So they had restrained her so that she could not pull out all of her hoses and stuff because she was still intubated. And I stepped away for like 3 minutes, and when I came back, all the alarms in the room are going off. And when I left, there was a nurse in there. And there she is trying to sit up, and she's managed to lean over and pull all that stuff out of her face.
So we knew her personality was unaffected.
Oh yeah, I knew she was a fighter. I had no, I knew that was going to be the case, but I didn't know she was going to do that. But regardless, so that was fun. The nurse that was working at that point told us that that's the first time that's ever happened. Of course, I figure that most of her patients are typically older, but Anyway, so she eventually got woken up. She's in and out, awake, asleep. So Thursday really is the first day that I get a chance to really talk to her at any length. The doctor comes in and visits and talks to her and stuff like that. I start explaining to her. I'm able to really explain to her what's going on, even though she doesn't remember it. And she continues, every time she falls asleep, she'll ask again when she wakes up, why she's there. So that was entertaining. But, it honestly, that Thursday evening before the surgery on Friday morning, because they were going to take her first thing Friday, even though she doesn't remember any of it. That honestly, for me, as a couple, has been some of the most loving moments that we've probably had in our 28 years that we've been together. We just were able to. I mean, she was there still in the hospital bed, but I was next to her, and when they'd come in every once in a while and check on her or whatever. One point she had woken up and I was awake, and we sat there and talked, and I was explaining to her again, hey, this is what's going on, and she'd be like, oh yeah,
Sorry.
I remember now. I remember you telling me this before, and she would tell me, hey, she's like, I'm scared, and I was like, hey,
Stop telling people.
I said, I'm scared too, but I trust God. I trust that in this moment He's got everything under control. He has had from the very moment this started. Why would He stop now? It just doesn't make any sense that He would save you through all of that. It just, I just couldn't see it. But we were, we would just, hold hands and pray together and just, talk about each other and our kids, and just have really, like I said, those. Because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Anything certainly is possible, even though I firmly believe she was going to come through no problem. But it was just, like I said, it was a really interesting evening, wee hours of the morning, I should say. So they take her out Friday morning, and she goes to surgery. I'm able to walk her there to the room and give her a kiss and tell her I'll see her on the other side. And, come back out, and there's a waiting room for the family and church family, and lots of people just stayed there. It was only a few hours, amazingly. Yeah. They did a quadruple bypass. Really it was just a few hours. It was so funny. The surgeon, as we learned later, not only, like you say, we're in a place in Houston area, best, some of the best doctors and heart stuff in the country, but the guy that's our surgeon is like in the top 5 percentile of the nation for vascular surgeons. And like top 1% in Texas or whatever. In an Indian guy, Chogli is his last name. Very nice guy. And when he came out afterwards to tell us that what he had done and everything was good, and they were in the room closing her up, and they would be done in a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And I thanked him and asked him if I could hug him. And he kind of looked at me a little funny. He says, well, I guess. So I gave him a big hug and thanked him again. And later I told one of the nurses, I told that I'd hugged him. She goes, he let you hug him? I was like, yeah. He didn't stop me, Anyway, so, but we were just very, very thankful that God had placed such amazing doctors and nurses. Like I said, through the whole hospital visit, everybody was just incredible. And then, like I said, all of our family and many of our church family that were there in the waiting room, get that good news. And then we all prayed together. And then, people were feeling a lot more relieved, I guess, really at that point. We were able to do church that next Sunday. They moved her over to the CVU or whatever it is area, to the post-surgery stuff.
We were live streaming before it was cool.
Yeah, we were live streaming before it was the thing to do.
That's right.
What's funny too is during that entire time, you were still hearing on the news about the coronavirus and all this kind of stuff, but it was still very China. Other things in my memory that marked that timing was the same time where Kobe and his daughter and those people on that helicopter, crashed and died. Just other little things like that were in that moment, but. So that Sunday, we were able to bring my laptop in there, live stream the church service, and enjoy church as a family for the first time in a couple of weeks. So it was really good. And like I said, the entire staff, they put up a sign on the door that said, do not disturb. They knew that we were having church service, and everybody was so accommodating. It was just, like I said, I'm telling you, if you didn't believe in God before and you were anybody connected to us, I don't know how you couldn't now.
Yeah.
But past that, it's been the recovery at the house, and which has had its moments, some intense, Some people don't like to listen. Just saying. Not mentioning any names.
Could
I
be
don't know what
anybody.
he's talking about.
The dog.
Some people are very
The
difficult
dog.
patients.
Yes, the dog.
You know? So, but it's been good. Like I said, she's done really great. Doctors that we've gone back to do post-op stuff with have been thoroughly impressed with her recovery. And like I said, I really honestly couldn't be happier with how she's done. I mean, she's still experiencing some pain here and there, but for the most part, she's back to as normal as you can be right now in Corona, USA. So.
Yeah. So, we don't have a whole lot of time, but so when you wake up, how are you? Like, how does that experience change the way that you think, or does it? I mean, it is a lot different for you because you didn't live it out in real time.
Yeah, I don't know any of it. So, I mean, for me, it's changed a little bit just from the stories that he's telling me. I mean, I say stories. I mean, what happened. I mean, how close I was to actually not being here. But yet I can't really, it doesn't really affect me because I don't know it. I mean, I don't remember any of that. So for me, I lost a week. I don't remember anything in that week. I went to bed Sunday night and I don't really remember anything until the next Sunday. So even those moments during that week when I was awake,
right.
It
kind of confirms what we always kind of guess, is that it's a lot harder on the family than it is on the person. And on that, I just want to say that the job that both of you did as parents shone through in the whole thing with how strong and I don't even know the words for how Lindsay and Eden handled it.
Our kids were amazing.
Yeah, the 15-year-old and the 14-year-old obviously should not have to go through all that, but they handled it like champs.
They were.
You could not have asked anything more out of them. I was amazed by them. Yeah.
And I've talked to them about it several times, making sure they understood how much I appreciated them behaving the way that they did during the entire thing. Obviously, he said it was stressful for them at the beginning, but I think a lot like me, once they knew she was okay, they were okay. It was still stressful for them, but I want to, if I can, just to kind of end on this. I know we're just about out of time, but the thing I guess at the end of all of this that I walk away with, obviously, years ago, back in 2012, surrendering to ministry, I was every bit as confident then that it was exclusively to youth ministry. I knew that's where God wanted to use me. There was no doubt in my mind that's where he wanted to use me. And I could never see myself in any kind of pastoral role. I just, we've joked with it before, who would want a pastor that would tell burp and fart jokes from the pulpit. Nobody's going to want that. But, over the last year or so, I'd make that little crack, and, people that we know that are in pastoral roles, they look at me and go, well, you'd be surprised, And so, like I said, stepping back last September, prior to this occurring, it was so many different things. There were big jobs that I thought I was going to get. I would have been really busy during that whole time that I didn't get them and didn't understand why I did. There was so many things that God was aligning prior to this event even occurring. Just showing me that, not only is he the God that holds today in his hand, but he also holds tomorrow. But he's taught me, as wrong as it was when I was 21, to say that God couldn't use me in any type of ministry role. It's just as wrong now for me to say that God wouldn't use me or couldn't use me in a pastoral role. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be a pastor tomorrow or anything else. But at the very minimum, I've become open to the idea, if that's where God chooses to use me, whether that be, in some ministry at our church or another church or whatever the case may be, then so be it. I want to be open to what God wants me to do. I don't want to live any more years of my life not living for him, not doing what he's asked me to do. So he certainly has used this moment to make me think pretty hard about who I am and what He's asked for me to do.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying through this whole thing is that for you, who got to live it out in real time, it gave you, a renewed confidence in God's hand in caring for you, but also in His ability to equip you and use you for whatever. I mean, if God can work this all out, then there's no limit to how you can be used. Yeah. I think it was, I don't remember who it was. There's some pastor somewhere. It was me. I can't remember who it was, but I'm going to take credit. Said that it is doubtful that God can use anyone greatly until He's broken him deeply. Yeah. And God, kind of strips away those things that we're tempted to depend on instead. Shows us how fragile we are, how fragile the things we care about are, and leaves us with just dependence on Him. And sometimes it takes some tough lessons for us to learn that. I'm grateful that He showed it in this situation by bringing you through everything and having you here where you need to be, by answering the prayers of the people in a pretty incredible way. Before we close, I want to read a scripture that I thought about as you were talking about the way that our church family responded. In John chapter 17, Jesus was giving His kind of farewell speech to the disciples, and He was praying. It's His high priestly prayer. And He said, neither pray I for these alone, I'm not just praying for the disciples, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word, that they may all be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they may also be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. And the glory which thou gavest me I have given them, that they may be one, even as we are one. And so, of course, Jesus' prayer here is that His people would be united, that they would have that unique fellowship and family bond with each other. And He says, when people see that, they'll believe that you sent me, And so a church can do a lot of things. A church can have elaborate programs, or a church can have a good preacher, or a church can have good music, or a church can have lots of different things. A church can have the color carpet you like, or whatever else it is that makes people leave a church or go to a different church or whatever. But ultimately, what we have here, I think, is so special, is what Jesus was praying for. That you'd have that unity, that you would have people that would come together. And I suspect that there are people that maybe you weren't even that close to in a normal sense that reached out and cared during this time because of what was going on. It was amazing to see that. And so I just want to thank the people of AMBC for the way that you did what Jesus prayed that you would do here, to come when these people were hurting, you hurt with them. And I think that's a really special thing, and that now that things are better, we can rejoice with them. And I think it's a really awesome opportunity that we have to come and reflect on this and share this. I do want to verify that Brother Todd is still the same Brother Todd, that although he has had these experiences, he's still the same. And so he has prepared a short, humorous monologue.
I don't know what you're talking about.
For us.
I was just going to say that, work's been slow. And I did interview here recently for a job as a blacksmith. The guy had asked me if I'd ever shoed horses before. I said no, but I had told a donkey to go away.
With that, I know we've lost you. So good night. We'll see you Wednesday. All right. God bless you. Thanks.